The Chicago Bears left the 2021 draft very happy as they traded up to get their presumable franchise quarterback in Justin Fields and right tackle of the future in Tevin Jenkins. And not a lot of teams have the strategy of what the Bears did in the 2021 draft, where they have a great first round pick, a great second round pick, and then don't select again until the 6th round. However, Chicago left the 2021 draft feeling like they were, in a sense, champions because they left with what they thought were going to be 2 starters for their team for the next decade. Now, less than 8 weeks into the season, Justin Fields is a mess, Tevin Jenkins has not played a game, and in back-to-back weeks, the Chicago Bears have been outscored by the Green Bay Packers and Tampa Bay Buccaneers with a combined score of 62-17. And on top of it, were clowned on social media by Aaron Rodgers saying he owns them. So it's been a rough few weeks for the Bears, and although getting outscored by 45 points in the last 2 weeks, including a 38-3 beatdown in Tampa, is, well, obviously not good, they have a lot more problems than just losing a regular season game here or there, or even 2 in a row. They are in the process of ruining Justin Fields less than 7 months after drafting him, and that's what we are going to discuss in today's video. So without further ado, let's begin. Now, this dates back to Justin Fields' first career start, which was against the Cleveland Browns back in Week 3, when Cleveland sacked Justin Fields, and to quote LeBron James here, not 4, not 5, not 6, but 9 total times. Fields threw the ball for 68 yards, and those 9 sacks totaled 67 yards, so in theory, Fields had 1 net passing yards, and it really doesn't take a genius to figure out this is going to immensely impact a rookie quarterback who wants nothing more than to succeed for not only himself, but the city of Chicago, his family, and his fans. Now, Fields did improve the immediate week after against Detroit, but it is kind of hard to do worse than a 6 for 20 with 68 passing yards and getting sacked 9 times stat line that Justin had in his first career NFL start. And the title of today's video is "The Chicago Bears Are Ruining Justin Fields," and the title goes back to the Browns game and most recently the Buccaneers game. Justin is, and especially was against Cleveland, but being set up for failure because his offensive line is A, not great, and B, even when they do give him time, because let's just go ahead and call it what it is, guys, the defensive line does not win every single rep, and quarterbacks do not go a full game without having time to throw the ball at least just 1 time. So even when the Bears are giving him time, Justin does not have good receivers to throw to outside of Allen Robinson, as Darnell Mooney, Marquise Goodwin, and Damiere Byrd, well, they simply do not cut it. And as I record this, second-year tight end Cole Kmet has stepped up the past 2 weeks and has 9 catches in those games, and prior to those games had just 10 in the first 5. So Fields to Kmet would be something I'd love to see over the next decade, and if there is a silver lining in these last 2 losses, perhaps it is indeed that. There are several things the Bears did on Sunday that are routine things that set up Justin for failure, and if it continues for the rest of the season, then yes, it is not far off to say Fields would be a bust, or would certainly be on pace to be a bust. There were several drops, not good blocking, and at one point a player fell down for what turned out to be the first of 3 Fields interceptions on the day. There of course is some positives from Fields' day on Sunday where he was extending plays that for the most part started out with poor offensive line play, but there were of course times where Justin was making rookie mistakes and holding onto the football a lot longer than he should have, and the strip sack Shaq Barrett had perfectly exemplified that. For reference, even though it is on the screen now, this was your typical play. Everyone watching, and especially Bears fans, are screaming at the TV to Justin move or get rid of it, or here comes Shaq Barrett, do something, and unfortunately none of those things happened except for a Shaq Barrett strip sack. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Justin Fields is perfect, and if his teammates just play better, like get open or being able to sustain a block for a quarter or half a second longer, that Justin is going to go from what he has been so far to an MVP league-changing quarterback in year number 1, because, I mean, we all know that's just not the case. But with Justin Fields and really Zach Wilson and Trevor Lawrence as well, it's not asking much for NFL teammates to play up to an NFL level. and what's especially concerning for Justin and the Bears is different than Trevor and the Jags and Zach and the Jets, and here's why. They, and this is kind of scraping for something here admittedly, but the Bears were a playoff team last year. Now, they weren't good and nobody was thinking, or at least they weren't great, but nobody was thinking Mitch or Nick Foles were going to lead them on a Super Bowl run with the roster they had, but the Bears roster, no matter really how you slice it, definitively was better than both the Jags and the Jets. Basically, and what I'm saying is they weren't the worst or second worst team in the NFL that had a combined 3-29 record in 2020. So for the Bears to be this bad with Justin this early in his career, along with the head coach that every Bears fan I've seen on social media and other Bears forums once fired in Matt Nagy, is not only concerning but also troublesome for Justin's future. The Bears at this point have to do what they can to build around Justin Fields from both a drafting standpoint and a free agency standpoint. Bring in guys that want to play with Justin and what we would assume to be a new head coach in 2022 that also wants to be there for Justin. It does not start with just his receivers, and a receiver that can help Allen Robinson not be one of the most slept on and generally forgotten about receivers in all of football. But what Matt Nagy and the Bears are doing now, not game planning around Fields and not playing to his strengths and having him be a statue in the pocket, would be near equivalent to having Peyton Manning in 1998 and saying, all right, let's go run the read option with Peyton Manning and Edgerrin James and see how we do. Also, quickly, that's not to say Fields is that caliber of a prospect, because he was not, but the point is they are playing as far away from what will make him succeed in the NFL as they possibly can. And for that reason, we revert back to the title of today's video. The Chicago Bears are going to ruin Justin Fields, and more specifically, Matt Nagy. Although Nagy does deserve some of the blame, and you could argue the majority of the blame for Fields' struggles in 2021, it's not entirely on him speaking from the Bears employees and really front office personnel perspective. General manager Ryan Pace has also failed his young quarterback in getting viable weapons to work with, because aside from Allen Robinson and Cole Kmet, and really Kmet is a stretch at this point, he has no weapons to work with. While Pace has not done a good job in helping Fields, and even really Mitch Trubisky for that matter, out in getting good weapons, because a combination of Riley Ridley, Darnell Mooney, and Marquise Goodwin over the past few years does not cut it. Now, Darnell Mooney could become a viable player, but this is all potential, and it's really kind of the same with Kmet too. Not to say Fields himself couldn't be a hair better, because he most certainly could and should be, but it is also worth saying and noting that not every rookie QB or young quarterback needs a unit like Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown, and Rob Gronkowski. But on the same side of the coin, it's also not asking much from Justin Fields' perspective to have more than a bottom 5 receiving unit, because maybe aside from the Texans and Jets, who else has a worse receiving core than the Bears, as in weapons to throw to? In order to win a championship, as in a singular championship, we're not talking about a Patriots dynasty here, because really that may never happen in the history of the NFL again, but one singular championship requires years of hard work, dedication, and of course the one thing that neither Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace have, which is the ability to be great at your job. And simply put, we've had half a decade of work to justify this train of thought and this idea, but neither Nagy or Pace are, again, great at their job. Their peak together was in 2018 with the dreaded double doink game against the Eagles, and at this point, with Nagy's lack of calling plays tailored to Justin Fields and Pace's lack of ability to draft good weapons on offense outside of an absolute steal who never should have been there in the third round in 2019 in David Montgomery, is more than evident, and both of these guys need to go. If they stick around for 2022, then the outlook of Justin Fields is, at this point, nothing but grim. If I'm the Bears this offseason, I am looking directly at Brian Daboll, the current Bills offensive coordinator, as the next head coach. Look at his body of work the past few years with Josh and how Josh transformed from a project quarterback to an MVP candidate that at this point I would be shocked if Josh Allen did not win at least one, if not multiple, MVPs in his career. Now, obviously Josh put in an insane amount of work to get where he is today, but one thing that is worth noting is how every single former coach Justin Fields had dating back to high school in the draft process all raved about his work ethic and how he was always the first one in and last last one out. Now, of course, no coach was going to say, yeah, Justin didn't work at all and would come into meetings at Ohio State hungover, because if that was the case, then we would have heard about it in the media. But my point is, the work ethic is not the problem with Justin Fields. It is the guys around him and above him in the Bears organization, and for that reason, they need to go before they ruin Justin Fields. Now, with that being said, that's all I have for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and now is the time that I ask you to like the video and subscribe to the channel, as it would mean the world and help the growth of the channel. So until next time, I hope you guys enjoyed and have a great day.